after they are put out of the garden, now one of the things, and I mean each of the participants here have a curse. What I want to get to now is the field bringing forth thorns. Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 7, said that he had just received an abundance of revelations. It seems that he came to understand a lot of things. And he was given a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to buffet him, so that he wouldn't be exalted above measure. Now that verse seems to say clearly that the thorn represents a messenger of Satan. We can test that different places through the Bible. And I see verses that say, like, if you don't drive them, people, out of the land, that they would be thorns in your side, or thorns in your eye, or thorns. But anyway, these thorns represent people. People that don't have your own best interest in mind or something. They're like the adversary, the enemy, the spiritual enemy. Now, the field bringing forth thorns, since this, if we're looking at this figuratively, then the thorn would be a messenger of Satan. Now, doesn't that make sense? It was Satan that wanted them to eat of this tree of knowledge of good and evil, this tree of error. Now the field brings forth messengers of Satan because of eating of his tree. That seems to make some sense. But what about the field? What is the field? Well, the parable of the sower. The sower sows a seed. The seed represents the word. Well, the sower is the messenger, sowing the word, and then it brings forth wheat, which would be people that conceived, the word was conceived in. And so, well, the field is where you sow your seed. The field, let's say a preacher's field would be his congregation. That's where he's sowing his word. So now the field, the people, the congregation, brings forth messengers of Satan. Well, if Adam and Eve ate of error, now basically they're messengers of Satan. The field, their congregation, their people, become messengers of Satan. It seems a harsh thing to say, but if you have error, and you're sowing the error and bringing forth messengers of error, if Satan, if what he really is a messenger of error and a father of it, so that we all become messengers of error, well, that makes a lot of sense to me. The fields bring forth messengers of Satan, messengers that have error. We're all messengers of Satan to the extent that our message has error. It doesn't take much error to turn the truth into a lie. Now, my hope is that we can realize error and get out of it and refuse to be a messenger of Satan. What else here? Let's say this still doesn't make sense. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting something else here, but let's look at some of the things that don't make sense to me if you take all of this literally. First, again, what is a tree of life? What is a tree of knowledge of good and evil? What about a talking, lying snake or serpent? These things seem to be clearly figurative. And my feeling is that you can't mix figurative and literal. If you do, I mean, if there's a figurative message, I believe it's all figurative. So, something else is there's a river that comes out of the garden, and this river divides into four heads. Now, what kind of river ever divides into four heads? Where does it ever happen on the map? They can't find where the garden was, because when you look at the map and the terrain and all, it just couldn't be that a river divides into four different rivers. The thing that happens is that rivers come together and then travel as one. But this has it backwards. A river that divides into four heads. My feeling of what this is the river that flows out of the garden. It's a river of living water, the river of water of life. The same river comes out of the throne of God in Revelation. The tree is there too. But the river, let's finish the river, I guess. Let's say this river represents the message, the true message, the living message, the message that comes from the tree of life, the message that has truth and life. This river divides into four heads. This reminds me a little bit of the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2. It's an image that, I'm not going to explain that, my feeling of that image, but the image represents time, kingdoms over a period of time, the head, and then the next kingdom, and then the next kingdom, and the next kingdom down to the feet. This river dividing into four heads, I believe, happens over time. You have, let's say, the river represents Christ, the pure river, the river of living water, his message. At a certain period in time, I believe his message, another river divided off. And I believe down further in time, another message, another head. The head would be the authority or the, it seems to me that there are unique, special times, like of power struggles in church history. One being when the Catholic Church was formed. There was a time period in between there, right? Between Christ and 300 and some years later. So the power struggle, now you have a head of the river that divided off. Another power head could be the Reformation, when the Protestant churches were formed. So these kind of heads is what my feeling is, that the river divides into four heads. Well, if that still doesn't make sense, let's look at Ezekiel. Ezekiel said that the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, was in the Garden of Eden. Now, how was the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, in the Garden of Eden if Adam and Eve were the only ones in the garden and they got kicked out before they had kids and then nobody could get back in? Ezekiel also said that the king of Tyrus was in the Garden of Eden. Now, it seems to me that Ezekiel must have seen the garden as being figurative, and maybe even Pharaoh, king of Egypt, being figurative, and king of Tyrus being figurative. Otherwise, how were these kings in the Garden of Eden? It seems to me that there is plenty of reason to not see it as literal, these kings not being there, a river that divides. Oh, yeah, and where did the river come from? It seems that at this time, at this early time, it hadn't rained yet. If it hadn't rained yet, where does the river come from that can supply four other rivers, divide into four heads? It must be a pretty major river. How does it even happen that a river divides, terrain separating and not allowing the water to come back together again, where it's always the other way around? Rivers come together and join and travel as one until they get to the ocean.